Hello and welcome to another ITS channel podcast. I'm delighted to have Alex Rollo from PaperCut with us here today. I'm Tony Pullin.
And I'm John Caspell.
Alex, great to have you here.
Thanks a lot for having me, guys.
So your LinkedIn profile on LinkedIn says you're a technical success manager. Sounds lovely. Be great if you explain a little bit about what it is you do, your background, and what you're bringing to our friends at PaperCut.
Sure. Yeah. So I've been in the industry for, crikey, it sounds scary when you say it out loud, but it's nearly, I think it's 26 years, something like that. Working around, started originally with a competitor to PaperCut, and then kind of moved around from a couple of resellers, being a specialist for that software, and then over to Xerox. So OEM level, and then back to another reseller as like a pre-sales consultant. So mostly around the solution side of it. And then obviously had this opportunity come up at PaperCut, which I think has been about 8 or 9 months now, which has been great. So my role here, the technical success manager, is really to empower specific resellers that I'm targeted with and I'm working with to help them to sell and be as effective with knowing the PaperCut products and being able to sell them as effectively as possible.
Okay, so our partners see you as an extra arm in terms of technical consultancy they can come to for advice and help if need be?
Yeah, absolutely. So the ones that I do work with, it's not to take away from the great work that ITS do with their resellers, but it's almost just to provide an additional piece of artillery for them. It's almost like a dotted line direct into PaperCut. And of course, you know, if they're in a position where they can't log a ticket or they're on site and they need to ring the bat phone, I'm the person that they call.
Yep, fantastic, brilliant. Okay, now we know we've got a particular subject that we want to cover today, and that's great. So that's what we're going to get into now. So obviously we celebrate PaperCut as now the market leading print management solution globally, which is absolutely brilliant. We can all celebrate that. But I know that PaperCut are really focusing into that world of what they're calling print enablement. So I wonder if you could maybe just flesh that out a little bit about us, tell us what's happening and what's the big news.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, if we look at PaperCut as a product and print management as products through the years, they've really just been looking at, you know, secure print and, you know, tap to release type print solutions. But what's happening now is really there's a massive turn when we look at not only just managing print like that, but also around the infrastructure of PCs and the server infrastructure, because everyone's moving to 365, moving to the cloud. They're using Azure and Intune and Entra and all these fun things, and really not having the ability to be able to set up and manage print queues. So, you know, if we look at Intune, for instance, it's a great product for managing endpoints, but to deploy print queues is really tricky. So there is, you know, a massive gap in the market where there's just a real difficult and a big issues with IT managers in this area now. So really what we're trying to do is alleviate that by using our products.
Which is great, because we're hearing from lots of people about their customers having their cloud first strategy and making that migration to the cloud. But the issue they seem to be finding is they get rid of their servers, and then how do they print? How do they push out those queues and those drivers? And it's taken the IT companies and our partners a lot of time and a lot of sometimes knowledge they don't have to push out the drivers. I'm guessing print queue deployment is helping with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I say, you know, in Intune, you can deploy drivers, but it's really not easy, and it's fraught with loads of issues in being able to do it. So, you know, if we look at PaperCut Hive, for instance, our SaaS products, we can manage print queues and deploy them from a single pane of glass. So you literally log into the portal, create a direct queue, and you can share it out to whoever you want. So it makes it incredibly easy to manage it from that one point, to make sure that a user has got a seamless experience where they're able to print to the right printer, and, you know, they just don't know what goes on in the background. And for IT managers and IT staff, it's incredibly easy. You know, it takes away that massive pain and burden.
That's really interesting. So what was it that made PaperCut do it? I've seen this Quo-Circa kind of combined report that PaperCut did. Can you tell us a little bit about that, what the outcomes were from that piece of work?
Yeah, so I know there's been a lot of talk in the industry about how this has been a massive issue around the management of queues and the management of deploying queues to the right people. So, like I said earlier, there's a huge gap in this market now where, PaperCut have seen this and really leaned into it to be able to offer this as an additional function to our existing print management software.
Mm-hmm. So sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, so our customers have got, our partners have got lots of customers out there with MFDs, which this works very nicely with Print.Copy deployment, but it's also their printers as well. So they can help manage the queues and drivers on the printers.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is the great part of it. It's an additional selling point. So, if I put my reseller hat on, for instance, when I think about some of our customers that we had, that we would have a conversation with a potential opportunity or a potential customer, and we would say, well, would you like secure print? Have you got GDPR issues? And it's like, no, we're fine. We just want to be able to print. And at that point, generally, what would happen is that you would just sell hardware. You've lost the opportunity to sell PaperCut as a product, and it's just not part of the opportunity anymore. So, now we can go in and say, actually, how are you managing the queues? How are you managing your, drivers? How is this all coming together? So we're unraveling these potential issues and these bottlenecks that these IT managers might have. But alongside that as well, we estimate that 1 in every MFD that's sold, there's usually 4 unmanaged desktop devices. So all of a sudden, if it's 4 to 5 MFDs, you can guarantee there's going to be some desktop devices that need some form of management around that. Sure, they won't need secure print, but just getting those queues out and managed from from a cloud solution really makes sense.
Right. So what you're saying is that for some resellers, they might literally be leaving some opportunity, some money on the desk in the form of that single function printer, which they're not managing.
Yeah, exactly that. I mean, if you can capture that extra license, that extra bit of money that's on the table by looking after, alleviating that issue from that IT manager and be able to manage the queues and being able to control that device, there's a secondary sale that now you've got that information around how that device is managed and you can potentially replace that further down the way. But also you're getting that license where, right now, just by setting PaperCut as a secure print solution that you wouldn't necessarily have.
I think the secondary sale is really important because it gives our partners a reason to go back and speak to their customers. Maybe they've just done an MFD refresh, but they can go back there, talk to them about the customer's cloud-first strategy, how they're going to go down that route and be that trusted advisor for them and give them a solution to help them get to that cloud-first pathway.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree. I mean, there's no real, if you think about this, it can happen at any time. If you missed the trick and you've done a deal last month, there's no reason for you to not be able to go back and say, actually, have you had these problems? How's it working? And start uncovering some of these potential opportunities that are out there still. So it is something that can be an absolute second sale, and then again lead to additional revenue opportunities when you're looking at those desktop hardware further down the way. So
Absolutely. So how does it work? What is it you're doing behind the scenes to be able to get these print queues out to people? What makes it so much easier than what you've got at the moment with Intune, for example?
So with Intune, if you look at deploying a queue and deploying a driver, it's not an easy process. Like I said, you can push out a queue, but again, if you push that queue out, how do you know it's going to the right person at the right office? It might be that you only want one particular device out to one particular person. It might be the CEO's got his little desktop printer there that you only want him and maybe his PA to be able to print to. How do you manage that via Intune? It's not as easy and as clear cut as that. Whereas if you create a queue or create a queue into PaperCut, we have you name it, and then you select what drivers you want, whether it be x64, iOS, or Mac OS, or ARM64. You can attach 3 different drivers. And again, if you want to use a native driver for the OEM, you can do for x64. But if they haven't got an ARM64 driver, that's no worries. You can use our driver for that. And then once you've done that, you select who you want that queue to actually go out to. So you can do it via user. So you can say, right, this particular user gets this queue all the time. Or you could say, actually, do you know what? If you sit on this particular network, you get this queue, whether that be a floor or be a particular office. And then once you do that, you share it out, and that's it. That's a global, just a global amendment that's made. So now if you go into that office and you're in that VLAN or in that subnet, you open up that laptop, you see that print queue, you can print straight to it. It's great for those users that are moving between offices or just general day-to-day management of just making sure that the queues are to the right people.
Yeah, but it's not just distributing queues out to laptops that are already out there. It's if you run an IT department and you get a new starter join you, you hand them their laptop, they log themselves on, and that driver is automatically downloaded to that PC or the laptop for them.
Yeah, absolutely. So the only expectation really for IT is once it's set up, configured, and ready to go, is to make sure that the client's pushed that to the user. That's really easy to do via Intune, by the way. That's super simple. But and outside of that, everything else is just managing PaperCut. So it just makes life incredibly easy.
And that's PaperCut MF and PaperCut Hive.
Yeah, absolutely. So they both do it in slightly different ways, and the licensing models are slightly different, but effectively the same process.
So I guess historically our route to market, as you know, is via our copier dealers. But we're being approached more and more now by MSPs wanting to get involved as well, because they're having the issues. They're dealing with end users on a day-to-day basis with this cloud transition. I'm guessing print queue deployment is going to help them as well as our copier dealers with pushing out these drivers.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, again, going back to that cloud migration, that last server that people generally tend to have is the print server. It's the last one that they can try and get rid of, but it's really, really difficult because everything else can be pushed into the cloud other than that print server. So to be able to alleviate that, remove that pain, remove that headache of managing and creating queues and be able to just push that into the cloud, it takes away a lot of headache, not only on their side, because ultimately they're the guys that are managing that IT infrastructure, but from a customer perspective, because the estimate is on pricing is that it's between £2,500 to £3,000 a year just to stand up a print server, and that could be through power, having the expertise to manage that, making sure the software updates are all on point. So when you put all of that into account, and then you say, actually, we can take all of that away and just push it into the cloud and have it via our products, it's sometimes just an absolute no-brainer.
And there's nothing worse than going to a new location and going, well, how do I print? I've got to phone the IT department and say, oh, can you load a driver for me? Or I've got to send a document to a colleague and ask them to print it. It's just a faff. I just want to get there, log myself on, have my laptop know where I am, give me the right driver in the right location, and let me print. And that's what we can do with print queue deployment.
Absolutely. I mean, I spoke to a customer this morning, and it was exactly the same problem that they had. So that at the moment, they're doing direct print queue. So on some of their sites, they have servers, others they do direct print. And they're a global company with lots of offices based in and around Europe with lots of transient users. So as soon as a user goes, let's say Germany to the UK, they're using direct print queues. That's a service ticket. That is a ticket now that the IT guys are going to have to actively pick up. Right now, I need to map you to that queue. I've got to download the driver. So we've got to do all of that labor. And really, in PaperCut Hive, the only thing that they would need to do was make sure that client would be on that PC, which they could do again via Intune. They would open the laptop up, and that's it. They're done. The queues just naturally come down just automatically. So for me, it's an absolute no-brainer in how easy that would be from an IT perspective.
Yeah, but that's really interesting that you mentioned the direct print queues as well, because I think that, for me, John, I think that's one of the big differentiators in this. I think that's one of the big changes is opening up a slightly different sales channel, because print management with your MFP, with your Find Me print queues, so print once, release from anywhere, that's been the staple of PaperCut, almost from day one. But it's kind of what you're doing with this enabling direct printing as well. So, is this opening up routes into sort of like managed service providers, system integrators, just your average outsourced IT company?
Yeah, I mean, this would be huge on their radar again, because they're seeing these tickets come in again and again. And a lot of the times when you're in an MSP world, they'll charge per ticket. So every time a customer logs a ticket, that will be charged. And then what they do is they accumulate them up, and then they say, right, okay, your average ticket amount for the next year is going to be X based on Y last year. Obviously, if they can reduce that cost then comes down, they become much more competitive for that customer as well. So from a price perspective for them, it's great. They reduce their workload, and this all just happens in the background pretty seamlessly. So
Yeah, I guess if there's a takeaway for our partners around Print.Q deployment, what would it be? What would your advice be?
it would be to ask questions, be inquisitive. So I would always ask, what's your journey into the cloud looking like? Have you got Entra? Have you got Intune? Do you have any on-prem Active Directory still? Because what we're finding is you're getting these hybrid customers where they're saying, well, we've still got Active Directory because of print, because we still need to use group policy to be able to deploy queues. That's a real thing that's happening now. But if you're asking questions, say, well, actually, we're all Entra, we're all Intune, we don't have AD, but we have problems managing queues. I would always ask those types of questions. How are you deploying queues? How's that managed? Is there many tickets associated to that? Any IT calls? How does that look? If I turned up in your office today and I wanted to connect to your printer, what does that process look like? What does that workflow look like? So ask these type of questions, because that's the bit you're going to be able to streamline.
Great. So you've been talking about Intune a lot, and obviously from a Microsoft world and a Microsoft-centric view, Intune's great. But does it work with other ways of just deploying this PaperCut client?
Yeah, absolutely. There's several. I mean, most of the deployment tools are covered. Probably most notably second after Intune is like JamF and things like that. They're all covered. So absolutely. It depends on how they're kind of set up, but ultimately there will be a way to be able to push it out. Absolutely.
Excellent. I think you've covered some great things there, but what's always interesting to me is case studies and some scenarios. So do you have any offhand that you can share with us where an end user has spoken to a partner about their issues and how the partners helped overcome that by utilizing Print.Q deployment?
Yeah, so there are several that have happened. We actively use a lot in our presentations that we have absolutely called out. I don't know any of them off the top of my head, like where I can talk through the numbers and facts and figures right now. But I can only talk about the ones that I deal with on a day-to-day basis, where I've had customers. So just recently I dealt with a reseller where, again, they had exactly this problem where they had only 4 MFDs, but they had 22 HP desktop devices. They had no way of managing them. Again, they were using direct print at this opportunity. So they had no print server. They were direct print. And again, it was over several sites. So it was a nightmare for the management of those queues. So, but the great thing is we managed to get that customer to capture those print queues, print drivers, and the devices, and that increased the sales revenue for that customer. So it was, it was a decent amount in comparison to what it was.
And I guess once they've done that there, they can pick up that model and go to another end user, and have that same conversation, and again, capture that revenue, which they wouldn't normally do.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the great thing. You always, when we go and speak to resellers about this and we speak to customers about this, you see that light bulb moment where they didn't know about it, and then they see that opportunity and you think, actually, this would work really good at this account, or this would work great over here. And, I think sometimes you only need that one to be successful. And then you kind of get that waterfall moment where it's worked so well that you can now replicate that. And because it's the same story in every account, there's no vertical, specific discussions to be had around this. It's more that this is something that's an opportunity everywhere, and you only need one of them to be successful to really recognize how you can help everyone and be confident around it.
So in a nutshell, it sounds to me like managing print when you're getting rid of your servers and moving to cloud is a problem. Managing print drivers and print queues is a problem. And your options are basically somebody has to go around installing a direct printer install on every computer, PC, Mac, whatever, making sure you've got the right driver, you've got the right print queue set up, the right permissions, the right pre-settings on it. Or you try and do it with a script with Intune, Yeah, good luck with that. Or you buy a piece of software that can manage it for you. And I know PaperCut isn't unique in this particular functionality, but I think from what I understand, the licensing being per device with unlimited users and unlimited print queues makes it pretty unique. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a really good question, actually. The way the licensing model works in Hive is actually amazing. In comparison to some of the competition, what they'll just look at is endpoint. So if it's an embedded device, it will be the same cost as a desktop printer, for instance. So they will all be costed exactly the same way. Whereas with PaperCut Hive, if we look at that, you have a price for an embedded, and then you have a printer license, which is significantly less than a full embedded. Obviously, the experience is different because you're not tapping to release or any of that type of stuff. But to be able to get that queue managed in the product, it's the entry point, and to get someone in there is incredibly cost effective.
Yeah. And it's an upsell opportunity as well, isn't it, of course? Because you might do it for an MFD because they only want print. Of course, afterwards, they might go, well, incidentally, you can do secure print release. You can have finely printing. You've got integrated scanning, so you could scan directly to SharePoint without having to try and struggle with your MFD on how to do that. So you can all, yeah, I mean, it seems, I mean, to me, I'm biased as well, like you are, but it sounds like a no-brainer to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, once you get into these accounts, and it creates that element of stickiness, right? You get in there, you fix a problem, you solve an issue that customer might be having, and then you look at their fleet, right? Okay, now we're managing 30, let's say, desktop HP devices. How do we now, create a strategy around streamlining that for you? It might be that there's a separate opportunity to now put some more embedded based devices, some full size MFDs, and you're absolutely right, because then you start looking at scanning options, the way that we can utilize advanced scan features. If they've got document management solutions or something like that, and they want to use that as an onboard ramp, these types of things can be conversations that come out the back of this, just because you've made yourself sticky in that customer. You've become a consultant rather than a salesperson, and you're able to fix problems rather than just sell, which is really what customers want.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. I think over the last half an hour or so, you've given us some really great advice. So much so, I think you need to come back and do a part 2 on this, which we'll do another day. Alex, thanks for coming in. Really appreciate your time. I think there's some really important messages there about how our partners can go out and speak to their customers about the power of print queue deployment and the benefits they're going to gain from it. I want to thank you for listening and watching. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe so you make sure you get into any future recordings that we do. Please share it with your colleagues and friends, and we'll speak to you soon.